Serious, what's the creepiest true story that happened to you or someone you know? When I was younger, my dad was out of town and my mom let me have a few friends over. We lived right by a pretty busy highway, and over the years had quite a few people knock on our door for help. Car broke down, lost, accident, etc. While my mom was home with us, a man knocked saying he wanted to borrow the phone. My mother told him he could sit on the porch and use her cell phone. The man kept asking to come inside and asking if my dad was home. He eventually started trying to force his way inside. My mom slammed and locked the door, called 911, and put my friends and I into a closet. It took the police department 20+ minutes to reach us. By that time my mom had called a neighbor, and he came over his shotgun and made the guy lay on the ground until the police arrived. TL, drug guy tries to break in. Mom saves me and my friends, and badass redneck neighbor points shotgun at him until police arrive. This happened to a friend of mine. It's a Sunday. She comes home to her apartment from running errands around 1 p.m. She was in med school at this time, so she pretty much parked herself at the kitchen table and studied for the next 5 to 6 hours. She's sitting there and looks up to see a dude casually stroll out of her bedroom. No other entrances, she's sitting by the front door, so he's been there the entire time she has been home. He pauses at the doorway to her kitchen. Between her and the door, she basically froze. Then her phone rang and kind of startled both of them. She ran to get the phone. He ran out the door. She moved and got an enormous dog. He was in her apartment the whole time. This is one of my biggest fears. Didn't realize until years later that I was almost snatched. Grew up in a small town. Out playing in the yard with my 2 younger siblings like every other summer day. Guy pulls up alongside the yard in a truck, calls me over, asks my name, if I'm having a good summer. He says he could really use my help. He's out looking for his lost puppy. He can show me a photo of the puppy if I come closer. No, closer. The picture is small. Can I please help him? I yelled to my brother on the other side of the yard, Darren, come help us find a puppy. I have to assume he thought I yelled Dad because he naped screeched out of there without another word. I remember being really worried about that puppy. Until we had an assembly at our primary school about things strangers might say to lure you into their vehicles. Edit. Whoa. Till almost everyone has a almost snatched story. That's horrifying. There used to be billboards for anti-drunk driving campaigns that would show a picture of a happy family or whatever, and then let you know they were all killed by drunk drivers. When I was about 16, I saw my own face on one of those signs. It was a picture of myself, my little brother, and my 2 childhood friends that lived next door to me when I was in 1st grade. So, maybe I'm dead. One of these billboards was right by my work, so I had to look at it every day. After telling my mom about it, she said the father of the kids next door was a photographer. I'd just moved into a basement suite. Every time I went out I would lock the deadbolt, but not the door handle. But when I came home a lot of the time the deadbolt would be unlocked and the door handle would be locked. At first I thought I was just confused about which one I had locked, so I started paying more attention. It kept happening and I realized someone must be going in. When I went out, I assumed it was the landlady and was annoyed, but didn't say anything at first. Then one day I came home and found the wrong lock locked again. I went and pissed off and opened the fridge to get something to eat. There was a book in the fridge that I had never seen before. I collected old books and this one was published in the early 1900s, which creeped me out completely because it was like it had been left for me. I finally called my landlady and asked if she was going into my apartment and told her what had happened. She freaked right out, said the last person who lived there was a really creepy guy with mental health and drug problems. She got all the locks changed that day and it never happened again. When I was about 14, my parents left me alone overnight for the first time. I grew up in a small farming community, so my parents really had nothing to worry about. They left and I decided to take an awesome bubble bath and paint my nails like all girls everywhere. Obviously, while I was in the bath, I heard our back door up. I thought I was hearing things, and besides, I had locked all the doors per my mom's orders. But then I heard the kitchen floor squeaky spot. I didn't know what to do, so I just went under the bubbles and left my head out. I saw 2 shoes through the crack between the door and the floor. I could hear a person breathing. They stood there for about 30 seconds and then walked away. I heard the door slam, but I didn't move. I just stayed there until the water was freezing and cried. Then I got out, called my grandma, and checked the doors. The back door was unlocked and the lock hadn't been messed with or broke. Later that week we learned that a man was breaking into farmhouses. That's horrible. I don't know how I'd react. The sheer idea of that is skin crawling. People scare me more than the idea of ghosts. Don't know anything super creepy, but my friend just told me about what happened to his cousin the other day. Apparently his cousin lives in a really small town near / in some woods, his house being surrounded by trees. This happened at night. He gets up to go to the bathroom. Before he got there he noticed someone standing outside his front door. Just standing there, motionless, staring. He decides to open the door to confront the man and gets slashed from the top of his forehead, across his eye, ending as his jaw. The mysterious man then ran off and disappeared. The police still haven't caught him after they had filed the report. Luckily it didn't cut deep enough through the eyelid to get to his eye. He's also even more lucky that he happened to need to use the bathroom at the perfect time. Otherwise, who knew what this person would have done had he been left alone? He decides to open the door to confront the man. No man, just no. Back in the 70s my grandfather dropped my grandmother, mom, and her 2 sisters off to do some shopping on his way to work. Since he wasn't able to pick them up, they hitchhiked home. My mom at the time was only around 10 or 11. Middle sister would have been about 7 or 8 and the youngest was about a year old. They get picked up by a guy in pickup truck who has them all sit in the back row with one of them holding the baby. My grandmother was giving directions to their home from the highway, but the guy ignored her and went by their exit claiming he had to make a stop first. Didn't really say much else to them during the drive. My mom remembers my grandmother being very quiet and very nervous. Eventually they come up to a farm. Driver tells them to wait in the car and goes inside the house. While he's gone they just sit there terrified. They're in the middle of nowhere and know they couldn't make it out on foot. A few minutes later the driver comes out with a second guy who looks into truck and sees my mom's youngest sister. He starts flipping out, screaming at the driver that he shouldn't have brought the baby back. They aren't going to do anything with her and some other things I can't remember. Ends up telling him to get them away from the farm. Driver gets back into the truck, apologizes, and they get back on the highway and drive again in silence. My grandmother, normally a very smart woman, had him drive directly to their house, although I suspect her reasoning was she'd already given him the address before anything seemed off. They lived at that house for several years and luckily never saw either of them a second time. TL. Dr. A baby saved my grandma and her kids from being raped. My mom was kidnapped, blindfolded, taken to a dark place she still isn't sure was even a man-made structure, and then tied to a chair. The guy that took her kept talking to her the entire time. She has never told me details, except that the man was crazy. After a while she started talking to him, asking him questions, getting him to talk to her about less crazy stuff. She isn't sure how long this went on, just that it was a long time. After quite some time, the man, whom she never saw directly or recognized the voice of, told her, "I don't know why, but I need to let you go." My guess is that she humanized herself enough to him so that he couldn't go through with whatever it was he had initially kidnapped her for. He loaded her back up in the car and dropped off, still blindfolded, at a convenience store up the road from where she lived, told her to count to 1,000 before taking the blindfold off, then he left. After she got home and told her parents, they didn't believe her and thought she was making it up so that she wouldn't get in trouble for being out late. The worst part is her parents not believing. You get out of an awful situation and then have zero support for something unimaginable. My family were driving on the rural main road of Poland. We are Polish, and next to our car was this truck delivering large concrete pipes. We drove next to this truck for maybe an hour, maybe 2. I was a teenager, so I didn't really care. My dad figures we stop at the next gas station for a quick toilet break. As I exit the car, a pair of bikes drive past the gas station. I noticed because it was loud as duck. PP over, and we go back on the road. About a mile or so down the road there's an accident. The bikes had caught up with the truck, and as they were about to drive past it the large concrete pipes fell off the truck and smushed the bikers. Maybe they weren't fastened properly, or the truck swerved. I'm not sure, but they were dead. Blood everywhere. I still have a hard time thinking of what could have happened. TL. Doctor survived some real Final Destination shit. When I was about 9 or 10, my older brother and I had a few friends over to stay the night. My dad had to work the next day, so we were all left at the house by ourselves for the day. We were excited to play PlayStation all day on our Saturday off. Well, my dad worked late that night until probably 8 or 9. As soon as the sun went down we went into one of the rooms upstairs to play Uno. Fast forward 30 minutes and we start hearing footsteps slowing walking up the wooden stairs. My dad wasn't going to be home for another 2 hours, so we didn't know who it was. There were 4 of us, me, my brother, my friend, and his friend. We would take turns walking out of the room to see what it was, but before we could look down the dark stairs we would hear what sounded like someone running down the stairs as fast as they could, so they couldn't be SE. This continued for probably 2 hours, ending with all of us huddled in the room upstairs with the door wedged shut with a chair until my dad got home. None of us were really believers in anything paranormal, but a child's imagination is a crazy thing. Now 15 years later, I still don't know what to make of it, but every one of us heard those footsteps walking up those dark stairs. I bring it up to my friend, who I'm still friends with, and he remembers it just as vividly as I do. It kind of creeps me out just thinking about it.